7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond Chizito, your host on Spectrum tonight. Threats to democratization in Uganda. Does it make sense to talk about the possibility of the army taking over power? What does the Constitution say about such a matter? And is it at all acceptable? The country, Uganda, has been plunged into a debate about the possibility of a coup, a military coup, following statements in the media attributed to the Chief of Defense Forces, General Aronda Nyakairima, that the UPDF can take over power. General Aronda is quoted in the press as saying that the message is being deliberately sent out, that the military would not allow bad politics to take Uganda back into turmoil. He argues that politicians should stand warned and advise that should they not change course, the army will not watch as the country is plunged back into the past. More than a week ago, Defense Minister Dr. Crispus Chionga said that the army was watching and that there was a possibility that it could assert itself should the politicians in parliament continue to make mistakes. President Museveni is quoted as making the same statement at Chenkwanzi, although the NRM caucus refuted this. The talk about the possibility of a military coup in Uganda has left many wondering what message is being sent out by the UPDF, which has been perceived to a certain extent as a professional force that is politically involved at the parliamentary level as a way of avoiding past mistakes, including military coups. The opposition says that this could be a mere threat to frustrate Parliament from asserting itself, and the opposition in general, given the level of activism they are involved in. Uganda has gone through many challenges leading to bloodshed, and to many, a military coup brings back bad memories, and as such it's only wise that such a development is discouraged. Some leaders, including FDC President retired Major General Mojisha Muntu, who was a commander of the army when the professionalization process began, and an NRA historical, now Rujumbura County MP, retired Major General Jim Muhwezi, say they would oppose any possible takeover by the army. So tonight on Spectrum, we look at this matter to try and understand what could be prompting these statements, and if at all it makes sense for Uganda, which is said to be on the right course of democratization, to be drawn into such a debate at this stage. Our guest tonight, Hon Simon Mulongo, Bubulo East Mp, Vice Chairman of the Defense and Internal Affairs Committee, an expert on defense and security matters. Actually, he is a graduate of the National War College in Kenya. You're most welcome, Hon Simon Mulongo.
Good evening, listeners.
Hon Mulongo, why does the army want to overthrow our beloved president? You know he's just been elected, now they want to overthrow him. Why? And whom do they want to install?
Thank you so much. First of all, to me it's a laughable statement that the military can think of overthrowing a constitutional order and install a military regime, because the military are the vanguards of constitutionalism and constitutional order, because they're the ones who are a very critical component that is supposed to safeguard one, the sovereignty of a country, but also the territorial integrity, and above all ensuring that there is constitutional order in a country. So it will be perversive to say that the military wants to overthrow a legitimate and constitutionally elected government for reasons which I have not known. So to me, I've had the statement quoted extensively in the print media of the Chief of Defense Forces and also the Minister for Defense. But to me, that could be just a rude joke, because I don't understand the wits behind that, because that would be completely against the principles for which a professional armed force like ours, UPDF, can do.
What does President Museveni think about these men who want to overthrow him?
Well, I wouldn't say, because he hasn't said a word. I was in Chenkwanzi, and during the course of our discussions in Chenkwanzi, he never said anything directly to what the Minister of Defense and the CDF are saying. Only that he referred to a possibility in future in case certain, if the election, for example, generated people who can be against the national interests of the country. But that refers to something futuristic. realistic. And to me, that was more of a futuristic, perhaps unrealistic situation. But these two statements from the minister and that of the CDF are directly referring to a situation that possibly could be current.
Let's pick up from the president's statements. Again, paraphrasing from your words, you say, in case an election returns a person that people don't like. Let's explain that to our listeners a little bit better.
Yes.
An election brings a bad leader. People elect a bad leader. The army takes over. Explain that to us.
Well,
what you said the president said.
Well, he said, because we're discussing the issue of commercializing of elections and the use of financial resources, which become perhaps which is becoming increasingly a factor in elections, and the possibility of clean, neat, nationally oriented persons not being returned. And then, of course, it was like, no, the army would not just stand by and watch such a situation. Of course,
we can't leave that. That's a big statement. Who determines whether a good leader is good or bad? The army?
Of course, the army chooses for us. The army cannot choose, and in any case, there are parameters to define who is qualified under the law to be elected. And if the laws for qualifying a person who should pass as a member of parliament are inadequate, then we should go after those laws and strengthen them, because there is no way another person can stop. If anybody goes by the established legal regime and is elected, there's no way you can stop such a person.
Let's get the other tones clearly. DNRM, President Museveni has a history of rejecting elections, and he went to the bush. And you're saying he's saying the same thing. If an election comes and returns someone he doesn't like, the army which he leads could take over. There is a precedent. Is that something President Museveni is considering?
Of course, he sounded serious, and of course I take him seriously. He's a person who would like to see the country take certain direction, and I believe that he fought to have a country establish itself into terms of a democratic regime that follows the norms of the right-thinking states, of civilized states. And I would take it that he, on his run, though he was saying, given the establishment of the legal order in this country, I don't think he can take the steps he was saying he would take.
Well, we'll leave that for analysts to dig deeper.
Sure.
Let's play it safe and talk about things that are normal. Why are we hearing such statements now, Honorable Mulongo?
Well, it is difficult to decide, but I had a talk show in another radio station, and we had the spokesperson of the UPDF participate, in which he argued that given a crisis that was looming in the country, the military definitely would have considered to stabilize, take over for stabilization purposes. Now, to me, the situation that calls for military intervention is not anywhere near, because the military role is to intervene in circumstances that supersede the strength of the police, for example, in maintaining law and order. And if there is a threat to the institutions of the country, say by an armed insurgency or something like that, that supersedes the ordinary means of the police, then the military can come in. But that can only be for purposes of restoring order for the political system to continue, but not to install a military government, because really military government, that will be something completely different, and no regional organization, no international community would buy that. Let alone Ugandans.
Well, Honorable Mulongo, you are a graduate of a prestigious war college. From what I have heard, it's one of the three top colleges
in Africa,
on the continent.
Yes.
Let's try to define this crisis and paint some scenarios. What kind of crisis are we going through that would warrant a military takeover?
I don't see one. What I know is that there have been some contestations between the executive and legislature, and the situation has been purely within the legal parameters of the legal regime of this country. The parliament, members of parliament under the law, are allowed, if they can raise the minimum number of signatures, to recall parliament. And that's what some members, including me, did. We're raising signatures to call upon parliament to
you
sit.
also signed?
Yes, I did. To also meet and discuss. Yes, I am. This is not a party matter in my view. It wasn't a party matter. It's about the institution of parliament as one of the three organs of the state. And we want to make sure that the parliament reasserts itself and its independence, and that should allow the proper dynamics of politics in a democracy like that of Uganda. So really there's nothing irregular. It was within the law and within the rights of the MPs to do so. There's nothing irregular, and that to me cannot constitute a crisis whatsoever. And the arena for discussion of such matters were to be on the floor of the House, in which the front bench, led by the leader of government business, was supposed to present the position of the state, the position of the government. So really to me, that did not warrant any force of forceful means or intrusion by the military. What it required was the force of the brain and not the force of arms.
The force of the brain versus the force of arms.
Of the brain. Yeah, but if it was force of arms, it's unfortunate if the military was to think of deploying in such circumstances, because parliament convening would be picking the brains from either sides of the arguments and not the force of arms. So there was no crisis whatsoever, and I don't think there was such a situation to warrant even instigation for a force of arms.
Well, somebody has said that if the law is not on your side, argue with the facts. If the facts are not on your side, argue with the law. If neither of the two is on your facts, just argue. Anyway, let's talk about something else. Major General Mugisha Muntu, he was an army commander for nearly 10 years, one of the earliest army commanders. He thinks this is psychological warfare and a tactic by, the leaders to intimidate an assertive parliament and political actors. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, what I can say, whether I agree or not, what I can say is that it's fundamental for us who are running a state, a modern state, a Western type of state that we have, that runs on the fulcrum of three pillars. That is the legislature, judiciary, and the executive. And of course, spearheaded by the executive, requires that there is a degree of autonomy and independence to the three organs, and that any interference in the other can create problems, and that should be within the constitutional provisions. And I know that Parliament, as an oversight institution, requires that it checks the excesses of the executive and brings to order the executive where they think that the executive is not performing well. So in a matter like things we've been seeing in terms of corruption, in terms of pillage, in terms of thieving, in terms of excessive actions, they say, on the part of the security forces, petitions to the House and so on, really the executive should bear with the legislature to ask it to account for its actions. And that cannot be called a crisis, for God's sake, because which crisis is that? It shouldn't, because this is normal, and this is the dynamics of democracy anyway.
This is remarkable because you are a very measured man. Normally you use the words very, very carefully, but for you to say the kind of things that you're saying shows something really is amiss.
Well, I'm just calling upon anyone who would think otherwise to rethink, because I think Uganda has come a long way. We have a legacy that we're building, and President Museveni is on record to have reestablished constitutional order in this country. And is one of the few in Africa that really have measured democratic practices that are envied. Of course, the peer review mechanism have scored very highly in certain aspects of democratic practice in this country vis-a-vis other states in Africa and actually the world, because I also admire him for having been very innovative on the issue of no-party system, even if it may have had its own shortfalls at the time. So really, to reverse this, such gains, it could be very, very unfortunate. So my own argument is that the independence of Parliament as provided for in the Constitution is fundamental if we're to have a functioning democracy in this country. And I do not see whatsoever anything, if it is there, that amounts to a threat to national security in terms of parliamentary activities. It should be brought clear out, and we see, to warrant either local administration, police, but they're no longer there, the LAPS, or even the national police to really come in. Because if you are in breach of the law, then you're called upon to account for your actions or deeds, and the law is very clear about that. For example, when we had the contestations surrounding the death of our late colleague, the Honorable Nevanda, There are members who are said to have made statements outside the house that were amounted to inciting the public. So if you are outside the house and you make statements like that, and you're not covered by the immunity of the house, definitely you account for them, and you could be brought to book by the police. But if you are speaking from the floor of the house,
you're protected.
You're protected.
You can say anything.
Okay, you can say, of course, we don't expect you to be so out of order, but in any case, the rules of procedure also require that you are reasonable in the house. And if you go out of order, the rules also provide that you can be brought to order. And to me, that is part of the debate regime in our house. So where is the crisis, for God's sake, to warrant the military? Because the military is not a small issue. Military is a fundamental means, an instrument of coercion that can only be swung into action when there is a complete, big crisis that warrants it to intervene and stabilize the situation for the politicians to take over again. So really, I don't see, I'm an analyst, and I don't see the situation in this country to warrant the intervention by the military whatsoever.
And it's a very powerful military with a lot of AK-47, a few helicopters and tanks. And
well, we have weapons and weapon systems available as a resource to protect our economy and our people and our sovereignty.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. Threats to democratization in Uganda. Does it make sense to talk about the possibility of the army taking over power? What does the Constitution say about such a matter, and is it at all acceptable? Our guest tonight is someone who should know. Hon Simon Mulongo, Bubulo East Member of Parliament, also Vice Chairman of the Defence and Internal Affairs Committee of Parliament, an expert on defence and security matters. He's a graduate of the National War College.
National Defence
College. Some people call it the National War College.
No problem, yeah.
Of Kenya, one of the top 3 such institutes on the continent. You will be able to call in at some stage and contribute to this discussion. Let's talk about scenarios, Honorable Mulongo. What would it mean for an army to take over? Let's look at what has happened in this country before and other places.
Well, first of all, the internal situation should deteriorate to the extent that the center is not holding, that institutions have failed to operate normally, and that there is total breach of law and order that supersedes the police, and for that matter, the politics ordinarily is not functional. And in that case, the military comes in to take over the reins of power for purposes of stabilizing the situation and to allow the political system to take root again. That means that the military are not supposed to take over the reins of power as an objective in itself, but just to stabilize. And that has to be done properly and carefully, because then the situation to be arrested must be clearly defined. Should the situation where the military takes over power without warranting conditions, it will be a coup. And a coup is unacceptable in any modern governance system, whether by East African Community, whether by the African Union Commission, or even the United Nations. And therefore such a regime will not be allowed to last. They will be isolated, and definitely they will have to trade themselves out very quickly. And that kind of disruption in our history, the people, the authors of such history, cannot be respected, and therefore should be condemned, because it is not correct to do such a thing when actually there is no warranting conditions.
Well, of course, General Nyakarima, he's an intelligent man. He never told us what the threats are.
Yeah,
let us guess.
I think we should. We can't guess. I think we should call upon him to explain which threat. Is it? Will you have any?
Maybe the president, because the president is the one being threatened, they want to overthrow him. Maybe you should call him to account.
No, but I think it's good to ask the person who made the statements to explain further.
He was appointed by someone.
Yes. Yeah, I was elected by some people. I'm making statements here.
Honorable Mukula was called to account.
Yes, but that was personal now. But the thing is, I think it is just right and fitting to talk to the General Nyakarima and also to the Minister, Dr. Kionga, because I haven't heard them speak. I just read it in the print media. And it's important, you as the media houses, to talk to them. Of course, we as Parliament...
a press conference at the General Nyakarima.
And why didn't you ask them to explain the circumstances that warrants military intervention?
Let's talk about feasibility. Is it really feasible? We wake up in the morning, the army has taken over tanks on Kampala Street,
yes,
controlling
possible,
supermarkets.
Of course.
How long will it last? East African Community, African Union, UN. You spoke about some of these.
Well, a takeover now, if the military wanted to take over the reins of power, it's within minutes.
What would happen to our beloved president? You know, we love him, we gave him the people who vote. I don't vote myself. The people who vote gave him votes.
First of all, that's why I say I don't believe this, because the authority of action by the armed forces is vested in the commander-in-chief, especially at a strategic level like this. And I doubt that the commander-in-chief
hasn't heard about it.
the commander-in-chief can design to overthrow himself. It doesn't make sense. So I doubt that those statements were meant or directed as regime change at whose realm is the president himself. It doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't add up. So, and that's why I despise that. I don't think that's correct.
Maybe he wants to become president himself, Aronda Nyakairima, and he hasn't told us.
And then he should say that himself.
Well, he said he was planning a coup. If things don't go well, there might be a coup scenario. First we hear the defense minister, then the army commander. These are not people you can...
Right, yes, that's correct.
No.
But they need to explain further as to what they mean.
What was speaking, Hon Mulongo, 30 years from now, people will be interrogating some of these facts. So we better be honest to ourselves. Is the APDF a truly professional army? 27 years of the fundamental change. Has it been professionalized?
I did appear on the Spectrum and talked about professionalization with PDF, and I said yes, it is largely and very highly professionalized force. Of course, we can't say to the highest because professionalization is relative, but we have well-trained personnel in the military who have attained very good letters after their names in various prestigious institutions, right from tactical, operational and strategic training institutions, both in the region and outside the continent, and they've been exposed to huge amount of experience in terms of practice. So really, in terms of professionalism, they have attained significantly. But if the military is used or misused for that matter to interfere in the politics and democratic transition and development, that one will backdress the professionalism of that military, because a professional force is supposed to act independent and not to go even into irregular activities. I would definitely judge very harshly any national force that can be misused to interfere in legal political activities in this country.
And for how long will they be able to hold on to power after a coup, a military coup in this day and day?
Well, it could be as long as months, because then they have to announce as to what steps they intend or are taking to return the power to rightful political regime. And it can take months, of course.
What would happen? They would suspend the constitution.
They would suspend
parliament.
Yeah, they would
India suspended parliament, so we'll be drawing parallels there, won't we?
Yes, so you suspend the constitution, and therefore institutions that are constitutional fall by the wayside, and then maybe they can establish either council or a commission or something. Well, people like us will now go away. I mean, we have no work, and the cassava and potatoes or trade or teach or do other things.
And you would watch things
from the sides, and maybe either return if you are alive, and then know how to participate.
Would the generals in the army support this, do you think?
No, I doubt. As I said, professional soldiers within our establishment, I doubt if they can go by this. And that's why I'm doubting the whole thing that the military can come in. I don't understand that. Well, it doesn't just make sense.
Makes your hair stand on end. Some of us lived through a little bit of Idi Amin. We know what it is. We're very young, some of us. We lived through Milton Obote, Okello Lutua. We're still alive.
They can do that, of course, but I'm saying it can't last, and it won't be a solution, because the solution to a political situation is political. The military can only come in to stabilize. Otherwise, a political situation begets a political solution, and not a military one.
You don't think it's sustainable? Of course, we saw Sani Abacha in Nigeria. He died in a certain way.
The more modern the state is moving forward, the less sustainable the military regime can ever last.
Would the population support a coup?
No.
What would they do? They can only go back and grow cassava, look after their banana gardens. What can they do? They don't even have. They can't fight against AK-47.
No,
so
you can't. Of course, the population, depending on the way, because I in Pakistan, for example, the population ran into the streets and they were jubilating for the takeover by the military. So it depends on the circumstances.
So even if you hear some of them would gladly go.
Yes, if the people, because if the people didn't like the mayor, for example, or the RDC, they can say, wow, to hell with that, and jump in. But do you think they will be knowing what they're doing?
Yeah, maybe there's no doubt in the streets.
There'll be short-term celebration. But seriously, people who know statecraft and who know issues of politics and governance will definitely go cold.
Here they would not be happy because they still love their president.
Of course.
The man who lives in Entebbe. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'll go for a break.
He's not just the man who lives in Entebbe. That's my president, please. Talk well of him.
His Excellency.
Yes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, we unveil Cindy in a Matika Kosa. Heat after heat. Friday 1st February 2013 at the Katikati restaurant. Actors will be 10K and 30K VIP. Saturday 2nd February 2013 outside Night View Casino in Ginger at 5K. And Sunday 3rd Feb 2013 at Little Beach in Terre. Actors will be 5K. Cindy will feature Bobby Wine, Jackie, Lillian, Mozambican Weasel, Eddie Kenzo, Gina Zamba, Munji, Azizazion, Young Mulo, and many more. Cindy's Amateka concert is sponsored by Silk Events, Jumai Property Consultants, Tascalada.
Excessive consumption of alcohol is harmful to your health. Strictly not for sale to persons under 18 years. Please drink responsibly.
And organized by Close Touch, touching your heartbeat.
Uganda Communications Commission is currently conducting nationwide mandatory SIM card registration. Register your SIM card in a few easy steps. Visit your telecom operator's customer care center or any other designated registration center and provide your phone number, a copy of a valid ID or any other valid ID with accompanying photographs such as a passport, driver's permit, voter's card, or a letter from your LC. Information on your physical address or residence will also be required. SIM card registration protects mobile phone users from incidences of fraud, incitement, terrorism, and hate messages, among others. Please note that SIM card registration is mandatory, and those who fail to register risk having their SIM cards deactivated. The registration deadline is 1st March 2013. All information shall remain confidential. Let's make communication safe. Register your SIM card today.
The Call of the Wild this Valentine's with Reds. Buy Reds and win a getaway for 2 to the Wild Waters Lodge, plus other amazing prizes. See present posters for details or visit your favorite bar or supermarket. Happy Valentine's Day from
Reds. Crisp, clean apple taste.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. Threats to democratization in Uganda. Does it make sense to talk about the possibility of the army taking over power? What does the Constitution say about such a matter? And is it at all acceptable? Our guest, Hon Simon Mulongo, Bubulo East Mp, also Vice Chairman of the Defense and Internal Affairs Committee, an expert on defense and security matters. He's also a graduate of the National Defense College in Kenya. You will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Now, retired Major General Jim Muhwezi, as a historical member of the National Resistance Army, which took power in 1986 and which later gave birth to the UPDF, had this to say about the possibility of a military coup in Uganda today.
The NRM as a party and the UPDF as a national army will respect the constitution of Uganda. No, there can't be a coup. No, why should there be a coup? We are in charge of the politics of this country. We have guaranteed democracy as one of the principles of our organization. The constitution is clear. We are having regular elections where people are freely choosing the government they wish, and I know the army will defend that position. Personally, I think that the matter is being taken out of context. I'm sure they are just warning that if Uganda slipped back into the chaos where there is no constitutional order, where there is a breakdown and so on, then the army would make sure that we remain in that constitutional order. It is a non-partisan partisan army, but a politicized army. It is not a political. Our army is political, but it is non-partisan. So it's conscious of the will of the people of Uganda, that they can only come in when there is breakdown of law and order. And there isn't such a situation at the moment. We are a government democratically elected, peaceful, so there is no situation that warrants the army to come in. For example, if there was a coup, I would oppose it.
That's Major General Jim Muhwezi, the first Director General of Internal Security, the Internal Security Organization, ISO, one of the people who fought in the bush war that brought President Museveni to power just about 27 years ago. Honorable Simon Mulongo, do those words resonate with your mind, your thinking?
Absolutely. I think the words by the General Muhwezi are absolutely correct, because one, the military as a national force can only act within the law, and statements attributed to the Minister Dr. Kionga and the CDF General Nyakairima are absolutely unsupported by the Constitution. There's no a provision anywhere in the Constitution that allude to statements made by the two gentlemen, and therefore that's why I doubt that they mean the military taking over reins of power in this country at this material time and this democratic path. The curve we've made in terms of democratic transition is at such a high point that really the military taking over reins of power should be completely unthinkable.
First the defense minister spoke, next the army commander spoke. Who's going to speak next about a coup?
Well, let's wait and see, but we have the Constitution that guides us all.
What will the international community do? We really are still treating scenarios, because it makes a lot of people. Some people are born during the NRM, they don't know about a coup. What would the international community do?
Now, first of all, who is the international community? What you should know is that intervention, because if there is any intervention by the military to decompose political systems, activities within the country, that will tantamount to internal crisis, and definitely the state, which is supposed to have the right to protect under the UN legal regime, will have failed to do that, because a state like Uganda is responsible to ensure the protection of the fundamental rights of its people and its assets and wealth. So if the military, which is one of the national assets, acts against itself in the way of acting against the political regime in a country, that would degenerate into a crisis, and therefore the state will have failed to protect its own, and that will attract external intervention. And this is provided well within the Constitutive Act of the African Union, in which if the law and order breaks down and there is internal self-cannibalization in a country, and that the state therefore will have failed to protect its own people, then the external actors will come in to ensure they intervene. And of course the UN Security Council will also act in the same strength. And for that matter, the international community, namely other states, organizations, and forces will definitely come into play. And then diplomatical, of course, they will be isolated. Any group any junta that will be in charge will be isolated.
Diplomats will take the place to Paris and other places.
Yes, of course, they will take back capital flight and all these.
You mean even investors would go away?
Definitely, investors will flee the country.
Taxes would go down?
And taxes will go down, and then some
tourists will stay away.
There will be lawlessness, and I don't think if the military does so, because to contend with the modern Ugandan as a soldier, and you think you use the mean type of ruling, because Ugandans have been sensitized.
The Facebooking Uganda.
Yes, they can do that. They can do a lot to challenge in a regime of that type. And our constitution is clear that if anyone acts unconstitutionally, anybody will rise, and even after that overthrow will actually be considered legitimate because to defend the constitution. And and therefore that will be defeated. I'm not sure whether the general, according to what is referred to him, meant that they want the military takes over the regime and establish itself as the ruling authority in the country.
Maybe
he said something like that.
He's a man who speaks English. He should be able to explain, and he's a sophisticated man from what he heard from a distance.
Well, whatever it is, because if he meant that the military is going to police the politicians, then I would wonder what will have happened to the police itself, and which politician will have been so errant to break the law. Because if we break the law, you are arrested by the police and arraigned in the courts of law. That's the order. Where will the military come in? To arrest and prosecute somebody in the court of law? That's unthinkable. So I don't understand the wording. I don't know the wording by the general. Do you have any voice clip that you can play?
No, he spoke in front of the media. It's on the history books.
Right. So
you pick
maybe we're overjudging him. We're judging him too harshly.
Funeral, yes. Not books and
yes. Maybe we're actually too harsh on him. But if the assumption that he spoke the way you were trying to imply, then
the media has implied.
Yes, the media. Then that is, to me, it is inconceivable.
Inconceivable. You can't even begin to think about it.
No, you can't.
Under what circumstances would be a coup tenable? Under what circumstances would it be a good thing? What would have happened to justify a coup if it were to happen?
Well, a coup can be justified if the politicians totally fail in terms of meeting their constitutional obligations. And we have run away, for example, inflation to the unspeakable rates, say in hundreds. We have law and order totally breaking down, and we have either factions, irregular groups trying to manage their enclaves in terms of areas of control, and maybe taxation is reduced to their groups and areas of control, and therefore the military will just know that the political regime has failed to take charge of the state matters, and so they can come in. One is to restore law and order, and secondly that they can sort the mess out and help establish the conditions that will warrant the politicians to make a comeback and therefore go back to the barracks. But those conditions, in my view, are a complete imagination, and they're not anywhere in this country. We have every department, local governments are running smoothly. Well, not to say that running competently well, but at least they're running in a stable and smooth manner. The national state structures are operating. We're having law and order in the cities and so on. There could be a few cases of crime here and there, and indeed the police has worked so hard. We have recorded a drop in the crime rate in this country, and so really to me there's nothing obtaining to warrant even remarks of that type.
Maybe because the pickpockets might become too much, and then the army says, you know, there's lawlessness, let's take over pickpockets.
No, that's not a warrant. The objective should be clear.
Honorable Mulongo, there is this debate about succession and the possibility of a peaceful transfer of power. It's never happened in this country. Do you think there's a connection, or don't you think that's what we should be talking about? 27 years in power, one government, never had a peaceful transfer of power. Should we not be talking about the first peaceful transfer of power in this country?
Well, but that is within the democratic regime system that we have, and this regime in which I'm serving has only lasted 1.5 years. We're coming to 2 years, so
it's a young government.
It's still a young government.
27 years.
If we want, well, it's a young government, and as far as this parliament is concerned, the ninth parliament. But the executive is also, because this is a new mandate, fresh mandate, not young but fresh.
Fresh.
So
really fresh.
But when we come to end of 5 years, and then we can talk about transition, because that's when, for example, the NRM will hold its delegates conference to look at the aspirants.
They might like you.
Why not? If they like me, why not? If they like somebody else, why not? But it is them to really select the next candidates. And then primaries for the constituent elections and district and local councils, and then we come back to the national politics again.
This is Spectrum. You can call in now. Our number 0414-348-111, 031-226-0390, 031-226-1390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Spectrum, hello. Yes. Could you switch off your radio and then talk to us, sir? Spectrum, hello? 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 Yes? Good evening, sir. Can you switch off your radio, please?
Yes. What I'm saying...
Can you switch off your radio? We can't hear you well if you speak to us on the radio.
What I'm saying...
Yes, sir. Your name?
My name is Bob in Mtida.
Bob, yes?
Yeah, for the military to take over is not inconceivable. Nor is it dangerous because we have so many well-educated officers who can run the show. After all, even parliament is so expensive. If things get out of hand, they can take over and we have a go at that. I don't think it's dangerous. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello.
Hello?
Yes, your name?
Radio?
Yes, sir, your name?
Yes, I'm called Businji.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm going straight to the reaction toward the CDF of Uganda. I don't know whether you had a chance to speak with the constituents in the president, in fact, to come up with such a statement. In fact, they're probably threatening, but they really are trying to minimize the position for Uganda. I would rather the president not to intimidate the public. Thank you very much.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello, Radio 1.
Yes, sir, your name?
Good evening.
Good evening, your name?
How are you?
Very well, your name?
This is Jimmy calling from Kampala.
Yes, Jimmy.
For me, I'm just wondering why at this time in the fall, we are still thinking about overthrowing governments, what have you. Because we should try to align ourselves with other countries and think about development, roads, hospitals, all these things in a terrible condition. But for somebody to be thinking about the military takeover or whatever, for me, it just doesn't make sense. And I don't know where they're getting all this from.
Spectrum, hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, your name?
Good evening.
Good evening, your name?
This is Doctor.
Yes, this is your live on Spectrum, your name?
I'm Kalafex Kwaiji.
Kano Kulaji, you're welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I agree with the Hon Simon Mulongo. The army can't overthrow the constitution. And I'm stating it as a spokesman. True. The general never mentioned it was the army or coup. Never. The problem with our friends in the winter time is doing Western profession. Putting their opinion in the news. And that's a profession. Just put your opinion, put it on your opinion page. He simply said, stand one, we cannot accept to go to the confusion of the past, to the chaos of the past. Not to mention the army taking over, not to mention the coup or the army itself. So, why did you want, and indeed, when you read through the text of the story, there's no mention of the coup.
Who was he talking? Who was he addressing himself to? Who was he warning?
Of course, you
Was it Parliament?
in this country, the individuals, for example, attempted to grab the neck of the speaker, that he was overthrowing the speaker of Parliament.
So he was warning Parliament. He was warning Parliament.
He was warning individuals, not Parliament. He can't warn Parliament. The individuals in that Parliament were very decent. But there are also individuals in that Parliament that are chaotic.
But the government newspaper, The New Vision, quoted Aruna Nyakairima as saying the army can take over. Is it also a private narrow?
Correction, Edmond. Correction. The New Vision does not say that. Yes. It's more than that headline. The text does not say.
What did the...
As you know, allow me please.
Go on, Kano.
As you know, I am the organizer of the press conference. I was there. He neither spoke of the army nor the coup. So where does he want to get those two words? That the army can take over. I want to state categorically on air, the army can never overthrow the constitution of Uganda.
Talk to us about your spokesman for both the army and the Ministry of Defense. What did the Defense Minister say? He spoke about the same things.
First of all, Honorable Chionga was talking with the Committee of Parliament, which is the right forum. And the Committee of Parliament was sounding a warning. But please, if we continue behaving as if we are not honorable,
Grabbing the mace. Grabbing the mace. There will be a coup if you grab the mace.
when we grab the money, we are actually overthrowing the Speaker of Parliament.
So the army has to take over.
No, he didn't say that. He said the army can come in if we continue this way.
Well,
Never those three things. We have had sufficient confusion in this country.
All right.
The people of Uganda have elected their own government. They have elected members of parliament. Stay gone.
All right. Okay, Kanokulaji, we must thank you very much indeed for calling in tonight. You heard it. You grabbed the mess. Spectrum, hello. Good evening, your name? Yes, sir.
Is it May?
It was actually May.
Because some of them would be no longer represent the views of the people. They are inconsistency. They are black religion, the implementing which is now being created. They are doing this. But not recognizing it. Actually, they are trying to parliament into a theater. So I written that time also. I written.
Okay.
Individuals of members of parliament.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll probably look for that speech and try to. But I think Labor Day is in May and not June. Spectrum, hello. Yes, your name? Yes, Francis.
What I want to respond to on the page is that you see, like I'm using that these statements which not mean that we are ready to take over. That's like they expressed concern. Like the Minister of Defense said, we are advocating on their own. Those statements sent the public in Spanish of Uganda, which is not for this. But the point is, why should they make a statement like with a problem in Uganda?
Spectrum, hello. Your name? You live on Spectrum, your name? Okay. Spectrum, hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name? Spectrum, hello. Hello. Okay. Yes, you're live on Spectrum. Your name? Yes?
My name is Paul Gambe.
Yes, Paul.
Calling from Australia. I think this segment was very well calculated before it was released. You know, it was started by Hon Simon then in Chakwanzi, then by Hon Simon. I think it came up to intimidate the parliament because by managing to get the signatures to recall the parliament, it threatened the president that one day he can even be impeached by the parliament. So it was intended to intimidate the parliament and the country. But it has far-reaching effects in that when you say stand want, if you suggest that the army is now part of the solutions to the problems of Uganda, it means even it can overtake the government as a result of corruption and other failures.
Corruption, cool. Spectrum, hello. Okay, let's get back to the studio right now. Honorable Simon Mulongo, can a coup be staged because of corruption? Respond to the questions as you had them.
No, first of all, we are trying to imagine what the statements attributed to Minister Kiwanga and the CDF General Nyakairima. And of course, since we don't have any clip to play, we don't have the actual wording.
Maybe he didn't say it. Maybe it was somewhere else as well.
No, he could have said something, but now we're looking at more of the analysis than that. But I'm not here to protect them. What I'm saying that I like to be intellectually clear and intellectually, correct about what I'm assessing. If what I'm assessing is not clear in my hands, it puts some kind of difficulties. But assuming they were saying that they will go after errant members of parliament, the question would be, what is errand or what's misbehavior?
You grab the mace.
By members of parliament.
You grab the mace
because
take over.
Because the issues in parliament are dealt with within the rules regime in parliament, which is actually a law in parliament. If you misbehave, as I speak, I'm a member of the rules committee, and we're already handling the case related to the alleged attempt grabbing of the mess, and also behaving in a manner that's against the rules in the House. It is before our committee, and we shall soon, when we complete and conclude our investigation, we shall put a report to the floor. And if there will be any culprits to be punished, their penalties
you
will
can call in the army.
No, we don't have to call. And therefore, there is no way you can begin talking about the army intervening in this case. If any matter supersedes the parliament, we can recommend that DPP takes over the matter, and DPP would use the police to act,
not the army,
not the military. The military have very serious issues to deal with. They have much serious national issues, strategic issues, issues that threaten national security, its national stability, and so on and so forth, but not really to arrest a member of parliament who can be arrested by. So I don't understand how even these comments, supposing you are pointing at MPs, the Minister of Defense and the CDF would come in. It's not tenable.
Would it return, or could it return this country to the days of bloodshed? We saw them, some of us.
No, from what is attributed to them in the media, is that the errant MPs or misbehaving parliament can take us to the bad days, and therefore the military will come in to correct that. To me, it will be the reverse. The military will be taking us back to the bad days, because the bad days were days when the military took over the reins of power. So what will be the reverse? That the politicians are moving towards the bad days, or the military will be taking us towards the bad days? And if they come in, will they come to police, or will they come in to restore order in parliament? Because as I said, the legal regime in the parliament is well articulated within the rules and within the parliamentary act, and also the constitution, and all those can be prosecuted by the police, who are well available in the courts of law, supported by the DPP. So why should the military come in this case? If, according to my brother Mugambe Paul, that was calculated to intimidate parliament, I don't think that can work, because you intimidate MPs who are operating within the law. What does it mean?
It becomes something else. There are things we've been doing of late. Recalling parliament, the president says no, and you insist.
Yeah, but as long as we're doing everything within the law, what you need to do is to go after that law and change it using the MPs themselves. But if you can't do that, and they're right within the law, why should you do that? Anything outside the law is punishable accordingly. But if it's within the law, then the intimidation will not work.
So let's again wind up on the point of scenario. If they took over, they would suspend the constitution, suspend parliament, and maybe they will give us another constitution, give us another constituent assembly, another Udoki commission, new LCs and new this and
which will just draw us back into the doldrums of underdevelopment in terms of democracy.
Rise again from the deep.
How can they run without parliament? Somebody said bombing. They said parliament is even too expensive. Did I mean manage to run this country for 8 years without parliament?
Yes, I know. I would like to respect my brother Bob for his ingenious statement that the parliament is too costly. But one time my professor said that if you want to know the cost of experience, of ignorance,
right. If it's too expensive,
try ignorance. And the fact that's it. Democracy is expensive because even the outcomes are huge. The pros are huge. Uganda has stabilized, developed more than ever before under the reins of civil leadership and not military leadership.
The democracy dividend.
Yeah, and the spin-offs.
You have to know. Thank you very much. Honorable Simon Mulongo, the expensive colors of life. Member of Parliament for Bubulo East, that's in near Uganda. Vice Chairman of the Defense and Internal Affairs Committee. An expert on defense and security matters. He's a graduate of the National Defense College. So we call it the National. One of the top 3 on the continent. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your protect man. Spectrum will be back tomorrow. I could because of corruption. That one.